Hi, I'm Charles Rupert. I will be interviewing Ron Avery concerning his findings about the purpose of public education, the limits on its authority, and the law for funding. Welcome, Ron. Let's get right to the questions. First, where did you discover information concerning government authority and personal liberty?
Well, in reading John Locke, first and second treatise of government, he outlines the principles of property in there that regulate every aspect of government, from its lawful creation, its means of funding, and its limits on its power. And I just started applying those principles in my life.
Now, Ron, I understand you sued the Seguin Independent School District in the Guadalupe County Tax Office back in November 2006. Why did you sue them?
Well, in 2005, I believe it was November, the Supreme Court of Texas issued an opinion that in 2005, the school taxes throughout Texas were unconstitutional. And, well, that piqued my interest, so I got the decision, and it was about 100 pages long or so, and I read the whole decision and found out in there that they thought that the uniformity of the taxes across Texas violated Article 8, Section 1E1, which says there shall be no state ad valorem property tax on any property in Texas. And their logic was that there's a ceiling for ad valorem property taxes in Texas. And what had happened is that all the local districts throughout Texas were beginning to charge the maximum level. They were hitting the ceiling. And when these taxes begin to hit the ceiling or become so near the ceiling, their logic was that it became a uniform tax and therefore became a state tax, which was forbidden as an ad valorem tax in the state of Texas under Article 1, Section 1E1.
Now, you say that was the state's logic, but was that your logic too?
No, it wasn't. That made me begin to think, well, that's kind of strange, especially when if you look at the Constitution, Article 1, Section 1A says that all state taxes to perform state functions should be uniform across the state of Texas. And Article 7, Section 1, which deals with education and delegates the authority to the state from the local areas to do the task of public education, that education has to be uniform across the state of Texas. But then how do you pay for it with a tax that cannot be uniform? So what was happening in their decision was they were trying, it was a ludicrous expectation to think that you can pay for a uniform education across Texas with a non-uniform tax in each subdivision or in each school district. So my logic was that a state function like public education, which Article 1, Section 7, or Article 7, Section 1 mandates to the state, that should be paid for with a uniform tax. So again, my logic was If it performs a state function, if the tax performs a state function, it is a state tax. And therefore, if you're providing public education with a tax, it must be uniform. So what I was coming up with was that, in fact, there can be no public education supported by an ad valorem property tax.
Okay, Ron. Well, that obviously begs the next question, which is, what then is your solution to funding statewide public education in order to protect the freedoms and liberties of its citizens?
Well, it obviously can't be paid for then with an ad valorem property tax because it is a statewide and a state function. The local areas simply cannot provide, the local areas don't provide for a militia either. That's provided by the state of Texas, and so is public education. And once the people delegated their authority to the state, for the state legislature to provide for public education, the state can't turn around and delegate that back to the local areas, even to supplement it. And that's what they've been doing. They pay a little bit to the districts, the state does, and then they expect the local areas to supplement this. And what happens is the rich areas, they have more to supplement, and the poor areas, they don't have as much property tax to supplement the education. So you have ununiform education. So, and the people that created Texas in the beginning, they knew this was going to be a problem early on. That's why Article 7, Section 1 delegates all authority to the state to provide for uniform public education across the state. And what for? To protect our life, our liberty, and our possessions. And therefore, the means to pay for that must be uniform across Texas. And that means it has to come from sales taxes, has to come from franchise taxes, corporate taxes, excise taxes, and those kind of taxes.
So, Ron, why do you believe that the ad valorem property tax is a violation of the principles of property that our nation is built upon?
Well, I've come to realize that property tax is an oxymoron. It's kind of like open borders. You know, the definition of borders is closed and without permit, that you have to have permission to come in. Well, property tax is a tax that says it's similar to a life tax. I mean, does the state charge us to be alive? I mean, do we have to pay a tax on our life every year? Do we have to pay a tax on our liberties? What kind of if you don't have liberty if you're paying taxes to exercise them, and you don't have freedom, and if we're paying the state to be here, the only thing the state can charge for is the thing that it has lawful authority to regulate, and it has no authority to regulate our property or to because we don't get our property from the state. We create the state to protect our property, our life, liberty, and possessions. And therefore, that's why that's one of the reasons. There are other reasons that have to do with the authority. Since I don't have the right to put a lien on your property if you don't pay somebody some taxes or do something that the state wants you to do, I can't go into a voting booth without that authority and then delegate authority to the state or the local area to be able to put a lien on your property and sell it on the courthouse steps if you don't comply with some kind of requirement they have or pay them some kind of tax. The idea that this is the very mistaken notion about what democracy is. Democracy, everyone has a right to vote for the mayor. You've been a two-time mayor of Cibolo, and I think everybody ought to vote for the mayor and vote for people running for public office. But everybody that enters those voting booths for that, they have a right to be in there to vote so that we can find out who is going to be the official. But the idea of me going into a voting booth and putting a lien on your property in case you don't do something, I have no authority to do that. And if a million other people just like me went in there and you were the only one that didn't vote for a property tax, then they can't put a property tax on you and sell your property on the courthouse steps if you don't comply with it. So that's why it violates the principles of property. It's un-American. It should have never happened here.
That's a very interesting perspective. Just getting back to another question I asked you earlier about your suit against the Seguin ISD and the Guadalupe County Tax Office. What were the results of that?
Well, they dismissed it without ever going to trial, really. So we didn't get to discuss the merits of the suit. The defendants all filed pleas to the jurisdiction, which is a request of the judge to dismiss the case because they don't have jurisdiction to hear it. And there's all kinds of precedents made by judges now that have really gutted our Constitution. See, under Article 1, our Bill of Rights in the state of Texas, we have a right, all people in Texas have a right to bring a suit. It says, it's Article 1, Section 13, says, all courts shall be open for everyone harmed in their life, their possessions, their lands, their reputation, their goods, basically their life, liberty, and possessions. And there's no other requirement on there. It doesn't say you can't sue the government. It doesn't say you can't sue government officials. It doesn't say in there that you have a certain timeline to bring it on. It just says all courts shall be open. But what the judges have done is to limit your access by all of these kinds of judicial decisions they've made over the years.
Now, you said that your case was dismissed. Did the court issue any kind of rule of precedent to justify dismissing your case?
Yes, we had a hearing, and they brought up, I believe, I have to almost look at something here. The defendants brought up 6 items as affirmative defenses, and that's a kind of defense that says, okay, he has a legitimate case here, maybe in terms of his facts and everything, but there's other reasons why I can't bring the case. And here's what that was. They said I had to show a unique injury separate from everybody else and all of my peers. Then they said, well, the statute of limitations forbids any, bars any damages over 2 years ago. Then they said he didn't exhaust all of his administrative remedies. And then they said, well, you know, he paid these taxes voluntarily. So the voluntary payment rule says, you know, well, he paid them voluntarily, so there's no recourse in the judiciary. And then, of course, there's the no monetary awards for damages for violation of the Constitution. And then last but not least is their old favorite, sovereign immunity, where they claim that they're the king, they own your life, liberty, and possessions, and they can harm them at will unless they waive it in the Texas Tort Claims Act or through a congressional resolution that somebody must obtain from Congress before filing a suit. But the result was that and of course, in this hearing, the judge doesn't tell you which one he found was the good thing, or if all of them were good, or if only one or two. They don't tell you. They just said the plea is granted, and so I had to appeal that to the Fourth Court of Appeals. And the Fourth Court of Appeals gave an opinion that said the unique injury. I didn't show a unique injury separate from all the other taxpayers in Guadalupe County, therefore I couldn't bring the suit. And but that's and then I appealed that to the Supreme Court of Texas, and they denied it was for a review. Forgot what they call it now. But anyway, they denied my review.
Well, you're anticipating my next question because I was aware that you did appeal to the Supreme Court of Texas, and I'm curious as to how they ruled on the constitutionality of the 2005 school tax, in particular if no one could bring a suit in Texas challenging the behavior of the officials.
Well, that's a good question because And this issue even came up in their decision or during the process of their review. Some of the defendants or some of the parties in that suit said, hey, wait a minute. How can a school district be bringing a violation of the Constitution? They're not living beings. They're not. These are fictions. They may be lawful. Some of them are unlawful, but in this case, they may be lawful fictions. How do fictions have constitutional rights? The Constitution is written for people, living people, not for institutions and school districts and all that kind of thing. It's about people. So in order for the Supreme Court of Texas to issue an opinion in 2005, it had to grant life and breath to a fiction known as a school district. But when I brought a case challenging violation of my constitutional rights enumerated in the Constitution of Texas, they had all kinds of reasons why I can't do that, even though these things violate the Constitution of Texas. These judiciary rules of precedent literally violate the Constitution. That's why the courts are not reforming our country, because when people bring the suits, they merely dismiss them based on erroneous decisions, and none of this has to do with the merits of somebody's lawsuit.
My last question, Ron.
Yes.
Do you have any thoughts on the May 10 Seguin Independent School District bond election, where they're asking voters to approve $125 million in bonds?
Yeah, I sure do. I think everybody ought to go down and vote against that, mainly because nobody even has a right to enter those voting booths and slap a lien on their neighbor's house and their neighbor's a farm and their neighbor's business based on what authority do they have to do that? Now, if they want to go down to the school district and sign their own declaration and their own contract with the school district saying that I, so-and-so, hereby agree with the school district to pay X dollars a year, and if I don't pay that, you therefore will have a right to lien my property, put a tax lien on it, and sell it on the courthouse steps to the highest bidder, then that is their privilege. They can go down there and contract with. But nobody in this county has a right to do that on my property, nor do I have a right to do that on your property. And we shouldn't be letting people enter voting booths and exercise authorities they don't have and delegate those to people that can't obtain them. We just need to stop that. And besides, that's the whole purpose of public education under Article 7, Section 1, is to teach the people how to protect their lives and liberties. That's Article 7, Section 1. And have they been doing that? No. They're derelict in their duties. They are not teaching people about property or the principles of property. They don't test them nor teach them. And the result is nobody knows that they even own property. They think property comes from the state, and therefore they can't protect any property. And they are literally taking everything we have.
Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us there, Ron.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you very much, Charles. Enjoyed it.
Nothing like reading the newspaper and drinking
Yes,
beer.
sir. What are we reading? We're reading the Canyon Lake Week and the gal that's going to become the new Lily Langtree of the Silver Eagle Tap House in McQueen, Texas. This is the best thing that's happened in Texas since Lily Langtree. And if anybody says that she is somehow promiscuous or anything like that, we just shoot 'em.